Most hunters live by one rule: never approach until you're 100% sure the animal is dead. Giulio didn't wait, and in that one fatal mistake, the hunt turned into a fight for survival. This is the story of a hunt gone horribly wrong, a warning for hunters everywhere, because if the boar still moves, the hunt isn't over. The morning air was cold and crisp as Giulio Burattini zipped up his jacket and loaded his rifle. It was January in Piancastagnaio, Italy, and frost covered the ground beneath his boots. Giulio had been hunting for years, ever since he was a child. His father had taught him everything: how to track animals, how to be patient, and how to take the perfect shot. Hunting was more than just a hobby for Giulio. It was part of his life. Today, he and his father were hunting wild boar, one of the most challenging and dangerous animals in the Italian forests. For this hunt, Giulio brought his .308 Winchester rifle. The .308 Winchester is a popular choice for hunters because it's powerful, accurate, and reliable. Many hunters and even soldiers trust this rifle because it can take down big animals, as long as the shot is placed in the right spot. Giulio had other options. He could have chosen a more powerful rifle, like a .300 Winchester Magnum, but he wanted something lighter and easier to handle. The .308 was perfect for wild boar, at least that's what he thought. Over the years, Giulio had used this rifle to hunt deer, wolves, and smaller boar, and it had never failed him. But today would be different. Giulio and his father moved quietly through the frozen forest. The only sounds were the crunching of their boots on the frosty leaves and the occasional rustle of branches in the wind. Then they spotted it. A massive wild boar stood in the trees, its dark eyes watching them. It was huge, at least 265 pounds, with thick, bristly fur and long, curved tusks that shone in the morning light. This was the kind of trophy boar hunters dream of. Giulio's heart pounded. He knew he had only one chance. Taking a deep breath, he lifted his rifle, aimed carefully, and pulled the trigger. The gunshot echoed through the forest. The boar collapsed instantly, its legs buckling under its weight. Giulio let out a sigh of relief. The shot had been perfect, or so he thought. Then the unthinkable happened. With a loud roar, the boar suddenly jumped up. It wasn't dead. It had only been stunned. The massive animal charged straight at Giulio, its hooves kicking up snow as it closed the distance fast. Giulio tried to lift his rifle, but he had no time. The boar was too fast. Before he could react, its tusks slammed into his upper thigh, cutting deep into his flesh. Then, the worst thing possible happened. The tusk severed his femoral artery. Giulio staggered back, his vision blurring from the pain. His father ran to him, shouting for help. With shaking hands, Giulio grabbed his radio and pressed the button. His voice was weak. His father pressed his hands against the wound, trying desperately to stop the bleeding. But a femoral artery injury is nearly impossible to survive without immediate medical help. A few meters away, the boar finally collapsed, taking its last breath. But it was too late. By the time the rescue team arrived, Giulio was gone. Wild boar hunting is more dangerous than most people think. These animals are strong, fast, and unpredictable. Even with a powerful .308 Winchester, one bullet is not always enough. Most hunters follow the rule: never approach until you're 100% sure the animal is dead. Giulio paid the ultimate price for believing the hunt was over too soon. Now, his story is a warning for hunters everywhere. If the boar still moves, the hunt isn't over. A last-minute weapon change, an ill-equipped hunting party, and 30 hunters on the brink of disappointment. Wild boar hunts in Croatia are unpredictable, but sometimes those who endure the longest reap the greatest rewards. Greg had never hunted boar before, and when his friend Max called with an invitation to Croatia for the hunt of a lifetime, he didn't hesitate. The excitement was electric. Boars were cunning, fast, and dangerous. This was no deer hunt. But something gnawed at the back of Greg's mind. Neither he nor Max had ever used this hunting company before. Still, the promise was irresistible. A top-tier hunting experience, rustic wood cabins, hearty breakfasts, a heated swimming pool, and a high-paced chase with 30 to 40 dogs driving boars towards the hunters. The numbers spoke for themselves. 35 boar taken last year with 25 guns, or so they claim. Greg spent weeks preparing. The Croatian wild boar hunt demanded split-second reflexes and close-range accuracy, making it a perfect fit for his shotgun. His Benelli Super Black Eagle II, loaded with Rothweil Exact slugs, was his trusted companion on previous hunts. Holding it gave him an unshakable confidence, the kind you only get from knowing your weapon like an extension of yourself. Flights were arranged, paperwork was in order, and Greg went through all the necessary security checks. Everything was smooth, until he landed in Croatia. His gun never made it. Somewhere between the UK and Amsterdam, it had vanished. Greg stood there dumbfounded. He had spent weeks preparing for this, calling airlines, double-checking details, and still, here he was, gunless. Fury boiled in his veins. There was no choice now. He had to use a borrowed weapon. Max met him at the airport, and without wasting a second, they drove straight to a shooting range. Greg shouldered Max's Stier Mannlicher 3 out of 6, a precise, reliable rifle, but nothing like the shotgun he had trained with. The balance was off. The scope felt foreign. His confidence wavered, but he was hitting targets. He forced himself to adjust. Tomorrow was the real test. The duo arrived at what was supposed to be a 3-star lodge with heated cabins. Instead, what they found was a rundown dump. No swimming pool, no breakfast, just a tiny room with a single bed and a sink. They had been scammed. That night, they met the rest of the hunting party, 30 men from all walks of life, united by one passion. Stories were swapped, drinks flowed, but Greg and Max turned in early. They had come to hunt, not drink. Morning came early, 6:45 a.m. A weak protein-heavy breakfast was served, not ideal, but enough to get by. Then came another slap in the face. Paperwork, licenses, fees, bureaucratic nonsense that could have been sorted out weeks ago. Upon arrival, tension immediately took hold. Some hunters, longtime clients, demanded the best spots along the line. There was no lottery, just favoritism. The wind whispered through the trees. The air grew thick with disappointment. When the first drive ended, only one boar had been taken, and it was shot by the guide. The second drive was just as pathetic. The third drive was even worse. Miljenko, the guide, scrambled for excuses. The dogs can't pick up their scent. It sounded reasonable, but everyone knew the truth. They had been lied to. Half the group quit and went home. Greg and Max debated leaving. But one more try wouldn't hurt. The next morning, something felt different. Greg's heart pounded when he saw fresh boar tracks. Clumps of earth had been dug up where the boars had foraged the night before. Then, movement. 3 wild boar hurried across the track, completely untouched by hunters. Another shot rang out. A hunter startled awake, firing blindly. Max fired too. He had bagged a jackal. For the final drive, Greg was given a raised height, peering over thick undergrowth. The moment he had waited for had arrived. A wild boar, 40 yards away. He squeezed the trigger. The boar bolted into the trees. He missed. But Miljenko, desperate to save face, offered Greg and Max a free nighttime hunt. They accepted, and they weren't disappointed. A massive shape emerged from the blackness. It was the biggest boar of the entire trip. Greg's heart pounded. This was it. The final shot. Squeezed the trigger. The boar collapsed. 220 pounds of wild Croatian boar, taken down in one perfect shot.